Good afternoon to everyone who decided to join us today. Uh, I'm Dr. Chen Kertcher, and my colleague here is Dr. Gadi Hitman. I work on issues concerning international interventions, conflict management and resolutions, and terrorism. And Dr. Gadi Hitman is the head of the Department of Middle Eastern Studies and Political Science, and he specializes on security issues, Palestinians, Israeli societies, and I'm sure that today we're going to have a very fascinating discussion. Uh, it's not only fascinating, unfortunately, it's going to be very emotional. And I think that you all heard the past the week, what's going on in Israel. And I really hope that in this discussion today, we're going to uh, give you some insights about what's going on in the country and in Gaza. Uh, but first of all, I want to thank Professor Ronen Cohen
חייב להעביר את זה מפה לפה כדי
and,
לשמוע.
Dr. Hannah Arzi, who initiated such a meeting. Now, usually I'm used to see faces, but apparently all cameras are off. So I will just tell you what we plan here to do today. So I will speak first. I want to talk about a concept that unfortunately only the past few days is beginning to being mentioned in the international media. Already on Saturday, I was really disturbed about the incidents, and I talked to Gadi about what we are seeing here, and I tried to conceptualize what we're seeing is something that is a local genocide. It was planned and executed in the south of Israel, and I want you to understand why this is so different from regular terrorist activities that we've seen with Palestinians in the past, and also what we're seeing from other issues in other cases around the globe. So I'm going to talk about this and what does it mean if we're saying that this is some kind of local genocide, horrific atrocities that was being waged on civilians in the south part of Israel? And then I will give the floor to Gadi, who can give us a lot of insights on Israel and Palestinian societies. And from this point, the floor will be yours, because we want to hear from you. What do you think is important to know and understand? And we will try to elaborate about different issues. So let me begin about some facts that probably all of you are familiar with, but just to organize the ideas. October 7th, Saturday, on 6:30 a.m., everyone in the south, I think, and the center of Israel many were just beginning to wake up. Unfortunately, as we know, thousands of people were celebrating in a peace party in the desert, and they just heard sirens and rockets, and simultaneously, approximately 2,000 Hamas operative launch an entire attack along the border fences, invaded into the country, and immediately began the onslaught. And this was not just about military bases, this was about more than a dozen of small villages, kibbutz, and towns. And as we now know from different guides that they had, this was a planned and orchestrated attack to massacre as many people as they can. When I say people, is that every person, doesn't matter if they're the elderly, if they are babies, kids, families, and what was so horrific This was done joyfully, with cameras on, live feed, sending them to these families, kidnapping hundreds of people, slaughtering, etc., etc. And during the day, that the level of atrocities were just, it was so shocking. And in order to understand, I tried to look to Palestinian media, and could just see the celebration and sending candies and all in this part. Now, this is not a regular terrorist attack, and this is, of course, not a regular military operation. And here I would try to explain to you why the explanation that this was a local genocide is so important for us. Because usually, if we have a terror attack, it need to create some kind of a local chaos, strike a little bit of fear, and it's part of a small or consistent political program. But the UN decided in December 1948 that they have a convention to prevention the crime of genocide. A genus, of course, is like a group of people in Greek. And the basic idea is that, remember, 1948, 3 years after the Second World War. So if a group if a group is planning to destroy part or fully a group, another group, according to its nationality or ethnic identity, racial, racial or religious identity, and they don't have to kill all the people in the group. They need to have like a plan, a master plan or something to execute it, and to create or cause physical, mental harm in the intention to try to destroy the group or transfer the group, kidnap, for example, kidnap of children from one group to another. This is in the UN. This is in the UN Convention to prevent genocide. In these cases, then these acts are considered genocide, and these are part of the crimes against humanity. In such cases, this is not just an act of war. These are exception, and in these incidents, the international community is committed to take actions to against not just the people who executed it, but the entire people who planned the genocide. And I will give you two examples. In the 1990s, in July 1995, perhaps some of you are familiar with this incident. The Serbs encircled a Bosnian town during the Yugoslav war called Srebrenica. And when they occupied the town, they separated between the men and the women. They also, little boys were also accused, elderly were also accused, but all the other men were put together and were massacred. Approximately 8,000 were killed. And due to this, the international community decided to give much wider authorities to the UN forces in Bosnia. There were approximately 35 to 40,000 troops there at the time, and to NATO to bomb the Serbs. And later on, they established an international criminal court just to arrest the people who initiated such crimes of ethnic cleansing, of murdering and slaughtering people. Another example was in 1994 when in Rwanda, the Hutu majority initiated a consistent plan to look to and to work from village to village in Rwanda to take the other ethnic minority, the Tutsis, and to execute them. But there was no separation between man, women, and child. Everyone who was even was suspicious to belong to the Tutsis, they were executed. And later on, there was an international tribunal just to arrest and court martial the Tutsis. And what is interesting about these two cases is that not only the perpetrator themselves were arrested and accused of these crimes, but also people who were considered to initiate or to encourage such crimes, like people who are in Rwanda. There was a famous case that people who were engaged in the radio, who broadcast such ideas that legitimize murdering and slaughtering of civilians, they were also arrested and persecuted. Commanders, political figures, if you were part of these institutions that encourage genocide, then you were persecuted. Of course, we know much more about the Serb cases in the Western media than about Rwanda. So this is what we could see in on last Saturday, uh, and what is also, I don't sure that there is certain uh, paragraph just for this, for the cruelty and the brutality that uh, these crimes were committed. And I'm not going to go into details, not just because I also respect you and I trust that you are familiar with what had happened. Also because it's also, I see that when I begin to talk to it on it, I begin very emotional. Now, this entire onslaught is also something that, at least me, it caught me as a kind of also a surprise, because I was sure that there's a split inside Hamas, and that the more moderate part of leadership perhaps is trying to achieve some kind of accommodation with Israel despite its radical Islamic ideology. And this ideology, which actually do not see Israel, that Israel has a right to exist. Eh, and now we can ask ourselves what has happened there for the 16 years when Hamas is ruling Gaza Strip. The education of young people, and to allow them that when they see such atrocities, they burst in celebration and in joy. When they see dehumanization of other people, for them this is like it's celebrated as the best day of their life, and not denouncing or looking it as something that we should shun away from it and denounce and do action that these things will never happen again. So this is something that we have to understand, that this is the entire framework, because when we look at about what is the Israelis are not doing or thinking, and I'm sure that Gadi is going to elaborate and give a few of his really interesting insights about it. When we're looking about the Israeli response, we have to understand that this is community, the Israeli people. Uh, it was destroyed during the Second World War. Until today, we have, I don't think that we have the same number of Jews that we had in 1939. We always said that we're going to have this country and because it will never happen again. And then last Saturday, all of us could see that we are standing in front of an enemy who who gladly, joyfully want to do it again, to exterminate the Jews, if only they have the capacity and they educated the people, their children, just to come to the day that you will become a martyr and kill as many Jews as you can. So these were a few words for me just to understand the context, the political context, which I unfortunately, and I look a lot about in the past week for the international media, which unfortunately is not giving this framework of how do you address a genocidal Nazi or ISIS kind of regime that encourages repeatedly uh, uh, such atrocities. In my perspective, the international community only a few times did things to avoid such incidents or to correct them. And this was in the denazification of Nazi Germany after 1945, with changing of the entire constitution, the education system, the media system, and everything. And we could see it also after the occupation of Iraq in 2003, when there was an entire project and process that cost billions, but at the end, they tried to de-Baathization of the country of Iraq and to transform the way people think. Otherwise, in my point of view, what we're seeing now is gonna repeat itself because the people themselves believe that there is a legitimacy to wage genocide against other people. So I'm going now to stop here. I will give the floor to Gadi, and then later, everyone here, you can just come and ask us some questions, and I hope that we can clarify some issues. Gadi, please.
Thank you, Chen, for your short introduction, which is, I find it very important to all of us. I'm sure that all of you have so many questions since last Saturday. I myself have and countless questions. What happened? How did it happen? And it will be time, there will be a point of in the future that we all sit to try to analyze what happened there. I will divide it by my few remarks into two sections. First, I would like to speak shortly or briefly about three big failures that we have experienced last Saturday. And then I will try to predict or give any kind of assessment how the next week or 2 weeks are going to be based on the fact that the ground campaign is likely to start soon, but nobody knows precisely when. Okay, so to start with, I would say that we have more than three failures, but just to put them in three cycles. The first one, of course, is the intelligence one, and the big question is whether we had an advance alert before or didn't have it. If we did not have it, the question is why we did not have it, and what that means what went wrong by collecting the intelligence that will give us the opportunity to go to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of Defense and to warn them that such an attack is about to occur in the southern border of Israel. If we had a previous information about it, so the question is, what was the interpretation of this information? And if we misinterpreted it as we should do at the beginning, so this is another failure. But as I said, there will be a point in the future that the army and all the other agencies will deal with that. We'll try to understand what went wrong in that Saturday. The second failure is the operational one, and I divided it to two. First is the the overall conception that electronic devices or other equipment can deter Hamas from crossing the border. The fact that a small number of soldiers and tanks were in the southern front of Israel in the days before the attack was based on the assumption that if there is any kind of military escalation, it is not going to be in the south, but rather in the Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. So for years now, we thought, ever since at least for 2014, from Protective Age operation, which lasted 51 days, Israel, political echelon, military one as well, were under the impression or the conception that the defense, the electronic equipment that we dismantle along the border will do the job, and we failed with that. And the second operational failure goes to the same Saturday, when it took so many hours, before the military arrived to the area. The chaos was almost totally. So many soldiers ran to the front, not knowing exactly where to go, giving in the walkie-talkie different instructions from different commanders, and it took quite a lot of time before things were started to be arranged as they should be from the beginning. And that, of course, unfortunately, gave the terrorist so many hours to do what Chen he calls it genocide, and it is a genocide. And the third failure is the political one. And I'm not talking about the way that the Israeli government, the current Israeli government, is dealing now with the outcomes of this horrible Saturday. I'm talking about the conception that we can do normalization or even sign peace accords with Arab states and leave the Palestinians side. There are people in Israel who for years said and wrote that even if Israel had peace agreements with Arab states, the Palestinian problem or issue or file is an Israeli problem, not an Emirate problem or Bahrain problem or Morocco problem, which all of them had already accords with Israel. The problem is here, the people is here, the territory is here. And I can only give you my cautious assessment that, and we have to remain to see if I'm wrong or right, that what we saw last Saturday came from Tehran, told the Hamas, you should do what you have planned for so long time ago now, because if there is one thing that Iran does not want to see in the Middle East is a peace or normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is not Bahrain and not United Arab Emirates. It's something different, totally different from the Iranians. And this was the Israeli conception for over a decade. And it also, as I see it, according to my best understanding, failed. Now, looking forward now moving now to my second part of my short remarks. Israel has now only two options. One is full occupation of the Gaza Strip, and the second one is a partial occupation of the Strip and removal of the borderline by several miles or kilometers western from what it is now, in order to secure any sort of peace. I don't know for how long. I have to be honest with you, as I'm always honest with my colleagues, and tell you that nobody really knows what the Israeli government is trying to achieve in this war or military campaign that is now expected any moment. And slogans like "we are going to eradicate Hamas" or "we are going to demolish Hamas" are very nice for the Israeli people, but what exactly does it mean? Does it mean that after the military campaign, we will not see any Hamas members in the Gaza Strip? I doubt it. Does it mean that we will be in a situation that the whole territory of the Gaza Strip will be demilitarized from weapon? Allow me to doubt it too. So nobody really knows what Netanyahu is planning. And we will have, all of us, we will have to wait and see where it's going to end. The question in the day after is even more complicated, because after the war, after so many casualties, so many blood, Israel and the Palestinians will have to ask themselves, okay, what are we going to do now? What is the political order or the security order that we want, or maybe both of them, both political and security, that we all want to see on the southern border of Israel now? Are we going to put them, the Abu Mazens and the Palestinian Authority, back in the Gaza Strip? This is one option, I don't know. Is the old territory is going to remain under Israeli military dominance? This is option two. So there are so many questions that it's so early now to try to predict how it's going to look in the day after the war. But if I can recommend something to all of us, is before going out to such a war, we have to think about what will happen then in the day after the war. Two remarks that I think that might be interesting all of you regarding the West Bank. We have now nearly 60 Palestinians dead during the last week, during clashes between Palestinians and Israeli soldiers. It's a high number for a week. It's a very high number for a week, and yet the West Bank, comparing to the southern front, is relatively quiet. I'm not saying that there is no terror over there. I'm not saying that there is no confrontations between the sides, but relatively it's quiet because most of the Palestinian people in the West Bank have a different agenda. They are looking for something which is not necessarily what Hamas is looking for, and they prefer to advance their personal life instead of joining the national struggle now, without knowing what exactly is the national vision of Hamas and Abu Mazen, because it is most likely to assess the 16 years of disengagement between Gaza and Ramallah, that Hamas and Abu Mazen has different visions. So most of the Palestinian people in the West Bank are remain silent, and there are hundreds or dozens that are trying to escalate it, and the situation and the consequences or the results are 60 dead people in a week, which is a high number. And lastly, about the Israeli Arabs, which live in Israel itself, there are still, if I don't know if you read Hebrew, and I don't know what you saw in English during the weekend, but the first survey that was held among the Israeli Arabs during the previous week showed that nearly 85% of them supporting Israel, and they are removing themselves from Hamas after the picture the pictures they saw from the all the local localities across the southern border. And that means that probably 15% of them are not necessarily supporting Hamas, but they're not automatically identifying with Israel. It does mean, or the consequence, or the result is that the crucial part of them are remain silent, which is very good for the Israelis at the moment. And despite the pictures from Gaza after the heavy bombing from the air from the Israeli aircrafts, it is likely to remain like that in the future, because again, here they have a different agenda, and they know that they have a lot to lose if they join this escalation, as happened in May 2021, when each one of them who was involved in the eruption 2.5 years ago were charged in terror activity. And being charged with a terror activity within Israel is putting you under a very severe restrictions and limitations regarding the ability to be part of the Israeli society, which most of the Israeli Arabs are expecting to be. So this is what I have to. I want to tell you very briefly, around 15 minutes that I talk now, and if it is agreed on Chen, Dr. Kertcher, I think we can open it for questions, and we will try to answer as best as we can. Thank you, Chen.
Thank you, Gadi, for so many insights. Many of them, this is the first time I've heard, because the news usually don't speak about these issues. So the floor is yours. If anyone here has a question, a comment, something that they want to share. Also for me, in my recent Zoom, I also said emotional things, because we're all in very emotional right now. So please go ahead.
Hi, I have a question, if I can ask. First question is, what's the future of Judea and Samaria? Because now we know that they are, Fatah is still quiet, but after bombing Gaza, probably they will change the way of thinking. Like, no matter what, seeing what's going on in Gaza, it also comes to their mind that they can be second if Israel on the political world scene will be seen like now. This is the first question. Should I ask a second one?
Well,
that's okay. I can answer about. I think I spoke about the situation in the West Bank. I can repeat briefly about what I said. If you look back to 2008, 2012, and 2014, you'll see that despite heavy casualties of Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank was relatively quiet.
So you think it will remain like it was the years ago?
What I'm trying to say is that the internal split within the Palestinian society and the hatred between Fatah members and Hamas members is not going to disappear. And it's not automatically means that once they see the casualties now in Gaza, they will run again to the fence or try to hurt Israelis. But I am saying that some of individuals will try to imitate what's going on in Gaza and will try to join by trying to confront, maybe to kill, stab with knives soldiers at the checkpoints, or even goes or infiltrate into settlements. This is a scenario which is not an illusion. It can happen, like we experienced last week when we had some alert about infiltrating into Ariel itself. I'm talking about individuals, maybe dozens, not more than that. Most of the Palestinian population in the West Bank is not likely to join to what we see in Gaza. And if you take last Friday as a case study, despite Hamas calling for Anger Day, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I saw.
Not even in Jerusalem after the praise of Al-Aqsa Mosque on Fridays. That means that And Hamas is trying for a long time now to erase the West Bank. And they succeeded very much by those individuals that are trying to kill Israelis. But we cannot talk about second intifada or violent or third intifada of violent or wide scale of violence for a long time by thousands or hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the West Bank. This is my assessment.
Mm.
And the second
Okay.
question?
The second question is, thank you for the first, thank you very much for explaining. Second question is more controversial. Don't take it as an insult or trying to attack you. I'm really curious, what do you think? Because the opinion in the world a little bit changed. At the beginning, everyone was shocked and surprised and standing with Israel. And now what I can see in social media and people around me with, I thought very intelligent, but I am disappointed with them now. They're changing their mind and supporting Palestinian, like Palestinians are the Hamas, and people are afraid of killing civilians in Gaza by Israel. What do you think? How do you see that?
Okay, I will take it. I will. When people told me, even as other scholars in Israel, that now, due to the atrocities, the world opinion and the UN, which is a field that I'm writing on for the past 20 years, they're going to transform and be anti-Hamas. And I told them it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell you why it's never going to happen. It will not going to happen until the world will understand that you have to address these issues. You have to address Hamas as an assassinate ideology, murderous ideology. Just yet you look at the Nazis in the Second World War, and they are educating their people to be murderers. So they are using the civilians even today in the past 2 days. When the IDF gave a call and said, look, we're going to attack at this specific area, please evacuate all civilians, because this is going to be a war zone. This is according to the laws of war. And they prevent all these hundreds of thousands of civilians to evacuate the place because they want to see these civilian casualties. Now, as I understand it, Hamas scenario is, and we could see it from other occasion in 2009 to 2014, they want to attack and create havoc, and then they want Israel to attack. And because then they know that there's going to be a world outcry, and everyone will try to contextualize what's going on, like what happened. But you cannot do it if you're saying that Hamas, and you can see it, what is their major plan here, their strategic plan. They want everyone to adopt their Islamic doctrine. They want, at the end state, their vision is to destroy Israel, and as we could see a week ago, to exterminate the Jews and everyone who will not support them and join their way of Islam. This is a danger because it's their way of Islam. Now, I totally agree with Gadi here, because many Arabs in Israel and in the West Bank, they do not support radical Islam. They don't want to be part of this. They support, some of them want women's rights, basic human rights values. And the problem with the world that it always going and is being captured in this framing that this is just a question about an occupied people, and that's it. And if you will give them freedom, everything will be well. There are dozens of people who look and say that they need to have their independence or so on, but they don't going and butchering systematically all civilians, and they're calling all their people to do it and cheerful while this has happened. I saw it in 2013 and 2014 with ISIS. I know that in some cases, even when I read about Nazi Germany, for some time it was harder for many people of them. But here, this was really a total surprise for me. So I think this is the right framing, and this is a problem about the globe. It's very hard for people to understand how other people can be so murderous.
Yes, of
Looking at
course, you are right. I think the same way. I thought maybe you have a little bit different side on the situation, but how it's possible to change that Hamas, it's not Palestinians. It's not the same. To be honest, Hamas is occupying Palestinians because they, for example, today I saw the information from IDF, they blocked those people, they're trying to evacuate to the south. But there is still, I think, opinion from years before Israel occupying territories and Israel that bad state attacking children and women. But is this possible ever to change? Because that operation in Gaza now that will happen, it doesn't change it. How to explain people that it's a different subject? We're talking about the terror.
I'm sorry. It's not a terror. What we saw last Saturday, it's not a terror. What we saw last Saturday, excuse me if I may, what we saw last week is a genocide. And the very first fact that all of us should be familiar with it, that we are not in the Gaza Strip. We left Gaza Strip in 2005, and we are dominating the cross borders just because we want to make sure that everything that goes into the Gaza Strip is not going for military empowerment, and no more than that. And every time they are trying to attack us through tunnels or on the fence or on the air, we are retaliating and we are responding. We did not open a military campaign against Hamas, not in 2008, not in 2012, not in 2014, after they kidnapped 3 Israelis and murdered them, butchered them near Hebron, and not in 2021. We are the responding side. And when we're doing it in Gaza, we are calling the civilians to evacuate just because the very moral and human fact that the IDF has moral and humanity, and we are not trying to hurt people just because they are Palestinian people. We are looking, or we are chasing after terrorists, after murderers. When they are entering the Israeli border on Saturday morning, and they are killing so many people. By the way, I don't know if you know that they killed Christians and they killed Muslims as well. So when we are trying to be accurate and to analyze what exactly we see here, this is not a symmetric analysis, and this is not a symmetric picture. We are hunting murderers. They are hunting innocent people. And what happened last Saturday, if you talk with your relatives or family or friends in Israel or elsewhere, you cannot call it terror, because it's not a terror. It's a genocide. Going into beds of babies and butcher them in their beds is not terror.
I saw the pictures.
If you saw the picture and if you read the news, do very simple exercise. Take out the word Hamas and put inside the word ISIS. It's not the same. It's the same. That's exactly what ISIS did in Iraq and Syria and elsewhere. Okay, well, I hope I give you I tried to make it more accurate. I hope
I was very curious what you think. Thank you very much.
Boris, you had a question?
Yes. First of all, thank you that you assembled us today and explained the current situation in Israel. I understand that it is very hard to discuss a war, but it is even harder to discuss a genocide, that is occurring outside of our windows just right now. So I had several questions before the meeting, but you already answered all of them. So I have several questions. First of all, will there be a military operation on the ground in Gaza? Because I saw several news that, that there will not be an operation, that they changed their mind. And also, what international consequences can we expect from this operation on the ground? And how will this impact on the situation in the West Bank? Thank you.
Okay. Well, I will try to answer it. Well, first of all indications show there's going to be some kind of military operation. And I'm very glad that we don't know what's going to be the military operation. If it was open in the media, then probably it will help Hamas. So we don't probably the IDF will not publish the date and how they're going to execute the operation. If they will begin with a large scale, medium scale. I myself, many years ago, I've seen several suggestions of how to address Gaza Strip, and I know there are many contingent plans. So we will not see it, but it will not end just with the bombing. This is, I think, the Israeli public and also the Israeli military cannot afford just to end the operation just in this. Concerning the international response, there is a window of opportunity right now because all Western states, all the leadership, at least at Western states like the United States and EU and the UK, they all understand that this is like an ISIS area. Up until October 7th, there was a notion that radical Islam have a variety of colors. So there is the extreme, the ISIS, but Hamas, they are extreme, but they are not that extreme. And I think the really cruel reality, brutal reality, have shown differently. The majority of the world, I'm very sure that it's going to continue its outcry. We're going to see a discussion at the UN Security Council. And how it's going to unfold, I think it's also related to what's going on to be on the ground about the war goals, the declared war goals of Israel, the achievement, and also other atrocities that this will do. And mind you, we haven't seen yet nothing, because we have to, everyone here have to understand, Hamas is holding probably, well, the minimal number is talking that they taken hostage more than 100, 150 people. But if you look to the people who are not accounted for, it could be also for 400 people and more, that they are taking hostage and will probably be exploited by Hamas and their supporters. So it's probably can escalate, and we didn't address yet, and this is some kind of the elephant of the room, that this is not just about Hamas and Israel. Internationally, we're talking about Iran and Russia, and about undermining alliances of the United States with other moderate or cooperative other countries in the Middle East. There are threats from Hezbollah, threats from plenty of Shia supporters in Syria. We're talking about protests in Jordan. We're talking about different governments in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and other places who need to address that they are Muslim, but also they are not supportive of Hamas. And this creates a lot of tension in the Arab world. So every day, every week, it can just tilt the scale to this or to the other. As Gadi mentioned, the operation in 2014 taking 51 days. We don't know what will unfold, and just imagine that a rocket will gonna launch, probably not, but a rocket will be launched against an American aircraft, a terrorist attack, or something. Everything can just change. And when we're talking about it, we're forgetting other fronts. There is the fronts in the Korean between the South and the North. There is the tension between China and Taiwan, and there, of course, there is an ongoing war in the Ukraine and Russia. So this is a very important context that you raised, and we have to see it, because wars, in order to wage war, you need money, you need guns. So it's something, and we will probably will see it in the next few days. Thank you, Boris.
I don't know if I may, Chen.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if Katrina and Boris and the Rostan and Natalia and James and Roman, I just read the names on the black boxes on the Zoom. I don't know if oh, hi Roman, nice to see you. I don't know if you really catch up to the end what happened last Saturday. Many people all over the world try to compare what we saw last Saturday to 9/11. Well, let me tell you something about 9/11. In 9/11, 22 years ago, 3,500 Americans were killed. Well, Israel is one part 36 times less than Israel in its territory. That means that if we are multiplying the numbers of deaths on the southern border with 36, we are not talking about 3,500 people. We are talking nearly about 40,000 people. So I don't know if any one of you, wherever you come from, all over the globe, are really catching up, that you are waking up in the morning and more than nearly 40,000 people were butchered in less than 10 hours. I'm not trying to be emotional here. I'm trying to remain academic as much as I can. But I do not familiar with any state all over the world that will accept such a scenario. So, and I don't know, Katrina, what is going to happen within the Gaza Strip in the next few days. Nobody knows. But I do know that if we are opening a humanitarian corridor for the Palestinians to live, to live to the southern part of the Gaza, because we know that Hamas is using them as a human shield. So we have to flat the territory. So when the tanks will be there, it will be much more easier for us to make the southern border of the Israeli sovereign state much more safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let me explain. I'm from Poland. I'm a historian, and currently I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Ariel University. But I'm in Poland from obvious reasons.
I'm also from Poland, originally from Poland. My father is my father is a Holocaust survivor from Poland. He's now 89 years old.
I'm asking because I want to go back. So maybe after we can meet and drink something traditional after in quiet place. But I'm just observing, and that's why I came here today, because for me it's an opportunity to know academic thoughts from you, and you are more expert in your region than I am. But from the day one, it was the later on when the more information came, it was obvious for me that it's something not usual, not like any other time. It's not like 2 years before, a few rockets and we're going home and everything will be fine. That's why I tried to evacuate, because it's a place I don't know. I'm a foreigner. I'm a guest in your country. And that's a little bit problematic. I don't understand everything, but my problem is when I try to explain people that this is not like every time before. That's something different. What happened in the South and what's going on, the consequences and so on. And everything what I hear, it's about civilians, and it's very hard to explain that using people as human shields, it's not a blame of Israel, it's a blame of Hamas. It's their politics. So that's why I started to ask. Sorry for that.
Guys, sorry, we have an alarm. I have to finish this talk. We have now a siren. So I'm sorry, I have to end this talk, and perhaps we will meet later on.
Go, stay safe.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank